Our rule is always keep your friend close if they have oil. Keep your enemy closer if they have oil. So, welcome back, everyone. Last time I talked about Syria, and today it's been like almost 5 months after Assad's fall. So, how did the country do after Assad? And is there any progress to measure? We're talking about the diplomatic progress. Moving on. What changed? Syria after Assad. No more political prisoners. Now you can go to Syria and say whatever you want. I like Lamp. Oh, I'll start. I was trolling you, by the way. I was trolling you in AJ's stream. Captagon trade shut down. What's Captagon? Captagon is like a cheap drug that was being exported from Syria during Assad's regime. Because after Caesar's law, Assad had no other way of generating money other than selling Captagon. It's a very cheap drug. And reporters were saying that Syria was exporting times more than what Pablo Escobar. Yeah, they were manufacturing so many Captagons that they made Escobar look so cute, by the way. So the first thing that the current government did, which basically shutting down all the factories that were people producing this type of a drug. Militias disband. They are trying to eliminate all the militias on the ground by either, if they are good militias, they are just putting them under the military, the new military that they are forming, or they are just fighting them. Law enforcement rebuild from scratch. They are literally building law enforcement from scratch. Until now, if you want to join to become in Syria a police officer or an army, you just apply and they approve you, but there is no rank you get, because as I was told that you don't get any rank until they form. They do it more formally. So now you just join let's say a group of 20, and then that will be your group until they basically form the military. So now you can join, but you won't get a rank. Refugee beginning to return to homes. So remember when we talked here about the number of 12 million. Out of those 12 million, we're talking about, I think, 1.5 million so far refugees have came back to Syria. So that's why, if you see on the news, if you live in Europe, you would see it more, because in Europe they are talking with the new government, because there is we're talking about, I think there is 2.5 million Syrian refugees in Germany as an example. So they are trying to talk with the new government to somewhat arrange the return back of those refugees. Next. Landscapes and historical places, such as an example, Palmyra, Umayyad Mosque, lots of churches, very old churches, and Aleppo Castle. This Aleppo Castle is from the 13th century. We're talking about this is Palmyra Theater, which is 2 years old in history. And those two places, the good thing about them is they will be built again by, I think, UNICEF. Churches and mosques restored. Yeah, UNESCO rebuilding Palmyra and Old Aleppo. It's two old historical places. If you go to them, it's similar to if you watch those very old movies or very old TV shows where they show you an old city and then there is the castle on top of a hill. That's how old Aleppo look like. Swedish government's paying them to leave. Pretty much they are trying to facilitate the return back for those. I don't think it's correct to say they are paying them to leave. It's more of a political campaigns, we're paying refugees to go back to their country. That's it's not accurate to say, but I think there was lots of political campaigns saying that. But yes, Europe is trying to facilitate the return back of most of the Syrian refugees in Europe, especially Germany. Germany is being number one. In fact, Germany is actually cooperating with the new government the most for many reasons. This is one of them, because they want the refugees to come back to go back to their country. But there is a huge problem. As an example, there is 6,500 Syrian doctors in the healthcare system in Germany. So if you want refugees to go back, what about those 6,500 doctors? So imagine a country like Germany in one day losing 6,500 doctors in one day. It doesn't work, right? That will literally shut down the entire system. Economy. Economy is the most important thing. So number one, oil production. So if we go back to this picture, most of the oil is still in this area. Like all of the oil in Syria is still in this area, and this area there's still lots of conflicts around it, because whoever is the Kurdish fighters are insisting that they need a federal state in this area, and the new government is refusing federation, or what is the word of federation, I think, because those people are so corrupted, and they consist of former Assad officers. So there is no way that they would allow such a thing. They're like, okay, you want a federal, you want to have a federal here? No, that's not going to happen, because to become a federal, first we have to agree on stuff like the military and the police, as an example. So you can't just join in one day. It's like, okay, I need a federal, give me all the oil and you can take the desert. It doesn't work like that. That's number one. Number two, the Kurdish fighters here have a huge historical conflict with the Turkish right here, and Turkey is refusing to cooperate with them. They are also supported by Iran, which means there is also another problem that will happen with the US, because the US is not going to allow having Iranian fighters in this area. But Yasser, you just said that those also supported by the US. Well, they were supported by the US because those people were like acting as bodyguards to the US military base. There is a US military base right here, by the way, guys. But I think the last soldiers have left 2 days ago. So there was kind of, yeah, those were supported by Iran, but worked also with the US, because the US wanted the oil and they gave the US all the oil. So, you know, like the US's main role, like in this region, is like keep your friend close, but you keep your enemy closer. So yeah, you can say that. So now after all the US soldiers leaving, there will be like, the new government is trying to solve this politically. Is like, okay, let's talk it off, okay? But is it going to happen? Well, so far it's not happening. They did make a deal that within the next 2 years, the new government started entering these areas, and the current Kurdish fighters can enter the army and have, you know, like some sort of like whatever forms they have, or like form of a military they have, they can join the army as individuals. But the Kurdish leaders said no. We can join the army, but we will not leave this area, and you guys also cannot enter this area. So it's just making the situation much more complicated, because Syrian's economy is based off many things, and the most important thing is oil and gas. And if those people want to take all the oil and gas and leave the government out of it, it's not going to work out. Our rule is always keep your friend close if they have oil. Keep your enemy closer if they have oil. Exactly, that's what's happening in this area. We have oil. We're talking about 800,000 barrels a day. That's like how much Syrian... I think that was the peak. The peak at one point was, I think, 1.1 million barrels a day. Is that a lot? No. Saudi Arabia export, we're talking, I think Saudi Arabia export between 8 and 12 million barrels a day. But hey, that's still good enough, you know, because Syria needs 200,000 barrels a day, so which means we can still export around 600,000 of those. Plus there is gas as well in this area, and this area is still, you know, there is ISIS, so it's still not done. Trade routes reopen: Iraq, Jordan, Turkey. Now the trade is back, but there is a huge problem, which we will talk about after. Syrian pound reinstated. So the Syrian pound was, for $1 you get 33,000. Now the 1 Syrian pound equal to 8,000. From 33,000 to 8,000. That's a huge improvement, but still not good enough. Damascus airport seeing renewed traffic. So Damascus airport is back after 10 years of being shut down. Diplomacy and sanctions. Sanctions is the main issue right now in Syria. And we will talk about it later. So deals with the Gulf. Emirate and Qatar signed reconstruction and energy agreement, but there is a problem right here. Energy agreement, okay? So deal is agreed. Qatar has offered to help Syria bringing back the electricity infrastructure. So just to give you an idea how the electricity infrastructure look like in Syria, out of 24 hours a day, you get 4 hours of electricity. So that means there is 20 hours where you don't have electricity. And lots of problems going there, because that means there is no industry, because industry need electricity. Without electricity, there is no industry. So they are trying to rebuild the infrastructure. So what's preventing them? That's the biggest question. So what's preventing them? Basically, sanctions. What are sanctions? There is 2 different sanctions on Syria. US sanctions and EU sanctions. Europe sanctions. Conditional limited sanctions lifted. So some sanctions were lifted from Syria in the energy sector during what's his name? Biden have lifted some sanctions from Syria and the energy sector after the earthquake, because the earthquake did not just hit Syria, it hit Turkey. It hit Turkey and southern Syria. So the US had bunch of conditions to lift those sanctions. No political prisoners, transparent humanitarian access, cooperation on counterterrorism and the drug trafficking. It looks easy, right? Well, the government tried to do all of these, but the sanctions are not being lifted yet. Okay, let's talk about sanctions. Why there is sanctions on Syria? Imposing 2. Human rights abuse. Lots of reports about Syria abusing human rights during Assad's regime. From 1980, the sanctions started on Syria from 1980, I think 81 to be more accurate. Use of chemical weapons. In 2013 and 2012, Assad have used chemical weapons in a civilian area where they have killed more than, I think, 1,600 in like less than 1 hour. They throw it in an area full of citizens, and that area was against the regime, so the regime literally throw chemical weapons. But it wasn't just one time. In Syria, Assad have used chemical weapons against civilians 256 times. Suppression of protesters. This started in 2011 when the revolution started against Assad in 2011. So as a result of Assad's brutality, US have put more sanctions. War crimes and detention, which is, again, this. Key sanctions bodies. United States OFAC. European Union. United Nations Limited, mainly arm embargo. Canada, UK, Australia, and others. So these actually don't matter, because let's be honest, and this we live in an area where there is only one country, and that country can do whatever they want, right? Biden also doesn't remember his own name. Yeah, I said nobody's. That's a good point. So there is, Europe have left all the sanctions to help the new government to basically, start rebuilding the infrastructure, because we were talking about. Okay, this is the important slide. So what is the US demanding from demands from Syria? Why the US is not lifting those